special meeting of council to order. First item of business, recommendation that the agenda for the special council meeting of December 17th, 2014 be adopted as circulated with late agenda item 4D, report from the corporate administrator regarding the Northwest Regional Hospital District, and late agenda item 4E, report from Chief Financial Officer regarding the 2015 financial plan, capital works, and purchases. Got it moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Niche. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, tonight we have various petitions and delegations. We'll be hearing presentations from community folks. First person on the agenda, 3A, is Mr. Paul Venditelli from the Prince Rupert and Port Edward Economic Development Corporation regarding the Economic Development Officer position. Mr. Venditelli.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and hello, Council. I'll give you just a brief rundown of what I've done this last year and what I'm looking to do in 2015. So Prince Rupert and Port Edward Economic Development is the only economic development agency in the community. It's owned by the City of Prince Rupert. It's basically a one-stop shop for information and acts as the community contact for interested investors and parties. So having an office here in City Hall does keep me linked with the local government, with administration, and city staff, and it also, I believe, makes the agency more accountable to the taxpayers. My ask for this year is $50,000, which is down from $57,500 last year. And my budget and funding consists of the $50,000 from the City of Prince Rupert. $50,000 comes from Northern Development Initiative Trust, or NDIT, $10,000 from the District of Port Edward, and this coming year I've applied for a grant for $8,000 from NDIT to hire a grant writer. In 2014, some of the grants that I applied for was the Community Land Use Planning Program grant. That was for $80,000, and that's being used for the city to purchase a GIS system. I've done quite a bit of work with planning for major projects with Zeno, the city planner. The other grant is an economic development capacity building grant. That's by NDIT, and that's one of my funding sources that helps keep the corporation going. And then there's also the Economic Diversification Infrastructure Grant. I applied for that for $250,000, and that's sort of for a special project that the corporation is in the works right now. Some projects that I was involved in, that we were involved with, was the housing study. We were the funding source, economic development, for the housing focus group that was held at the Crest in September. So we were the funding source for that and helped organize that. The Airport Shuttle Center that moved from the Highliner Hotel to the Prince Rupert Hotel was funded and put together by myself and the Economic Development Office. We are in a two-phase piece with the business directory. We've done sort of the first phase, which will be rolling out early in 2015, and then we have the second phase coming in 2015, which to increase the size of the directory. Hosted a Buy LNG Bootcamp workshop at the Civic Center in the spring, and that was just to get all the local businesses and contractors familiar with what LNG is and how they can bid on some of the work. Was working with Horizon North worker camps through their feasibility study. I was a part of that. And also have taken part in many topics and discussions about the airport, and was a funding source and a piece in the Chamber of Commerce airport study that was conducted. So that's just a few of the projects that I was worked on in 2014. The 2015 vision essentially includes, as far as grants go, we're going to roll out the Business Facade Improvement Program through NDIT. That's a $20,000 grant. And that we'll have a committee, and we'll select businesses that apply, and there's a criteria, and then we'll help get some money for them to improve the outside of their building or business. We'll be applying for the grant writers grant so that the city can hire a grant writer for the community to use. And we've also applied for the local government management intern, which is an 11th month intern here in City Hall working in different departments. And those are just 3 of the grants that we're working on. And as far as projects go, we'll be working with Community Futures on the Northwest Growth Conference, which is a great conference to have for the Tri-Cities. That'll be held here in Prince Rupert, March 6th and 7th. Of course, as I mentioned, the Business Facade Improvement Program. We will hire and manage through economic development a grant writer. Continue support for Planning for Major Projects initiative. And we'll complete the 2nd phase of the Prince Rupert Directory and develop a strategy to attract some new businesses to our area in the retail side of things. And also increase, one of my visions is to increase marine traffic in the Cow Bay area. So those are the things that I'm looking at for 2015 to, going forward. And that's essentially it for me. Like I said, my ask is for $50,000, and that's it. I thank you very much for your time.
Just one moment, Mr. Ventilli. Is there any questions for Mr. Ventilli from council? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Next, we have from Ms. Crystal Lorette, General Manager of the Performing Arts Center. I'm not sure if she's here. Are you speaking on her? Is she here? Okay. Welcome.
Hello. Did you get called already? Okay. Sorry, I was just getting some photocopies done. So I will hand these out. I'll make sure I have enough. This is what we'll be going over tonight.
Thanks.
I had to get Rory to photocopy for me because I thought the computer broke down. Yeah, it will be. So I'll leave one for Chris. Okay. And I do have one.
So just before you get started, I just need to say that technically speaking, before I became mayor, I was appointed to the Leicester Center Board of Directors. Technically speaking, I'm still a member of the board, so I have to remove myself from this conversation just due to conflict of interest. So Councillor Cunningham will replace me during this conversation so that I don't have any undue influence on the conversation, and I will leave the room, and then when you're done, I'll come back. But I just have to let you know that I need to do that. So Councillor Cunningham, you'll be acting mayor at the moment, and I will leave the room. You press the green button there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Brain.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jasper Nolos. I'm the President of the Leicester Center Board of Directors. I would like to introduce everybody who's here right now. We have our General Manager, Crystal Lorette, our Treasurer, Tony Carlson, and our Vice President, Joanne Finley. I'd like to start this presentation off by reading a prepared statement, and then I'll pass it on to whoever's next. Okay, so the Prince Rupert Performing Arts Center Society, also known as PRPACS, or I will be referring to them as the Society, is a nonprofit society that was incorporated in 1986. The Society is in good standing under the BC Societies Act and is governed by an active board of directors. The majority of our presentation activities included professional artists who are reimbursed for their work, as well as community theater productions. As a cultural organization, we work in our community to encourage participation in creative activities. We do this through promoting, creating, producing, and presenting works in dance, theater, music, visual, and all other performing arts. Our mission statement is to foster the appreciation and enjoyment of, and the participation in the full range of performing arts in the Prince Rupert area. We exist for the cultural benefit of the people of the Northwest. We are innovative in our planning and are constantly looking for new ways to expand our audience. The composition of the board of directors is 2 appointed from the city, 1 appointed from the school district, and 6 elected from the community. The society hires a general manager to run the Lester Center. Our general manager, Crystal Lorette, works closely with our neighbors and her colleagues as part of a network of presenters throughout BC. This network utilizes block funding opportunities, and we agree as a board that this is a good strategy. It entices mainstream Canadian touring artists to come into our relatively remote, rural community on the northwest coast of BC. The general manager is responsible for hiring a technical director and also applies to Service Canada for a summer student every year. In addition to being a rental house, we also present a wide range of events and professional artists in the community each season. We present art of many kinds from local, regional, national, and international artists. The center serves as a focal point for the community and is used by the school district, dance schools, community service organizations, and local theater groups. We also work with the local concert society to support their efforts to bring in classical music for audiences and appreciate that genre of music. We have had wedding receptions in our lobby and provided space for a multitude of community fundraisers through working with our community partners and supporting them collaboratively. Prince Rupert knows how to work together and has a great community spirit, especially when it comes to the arts. The society leases the building from the city and applies annually for an operating grant. This grant aids the facility with day-to-day operation expenses. All other funds are raised from donations, an annual membership drive, yearly season shows, special fundraising events throughout the year, and rentals. We project an annual budget based on the previous year's expenses and allow for some contingencies. Currently, we are managing our yearly budget and are on track with expenses to date. We have developed a capital improvement fund that is supported by $1 per ticket sold and also tickets purchased at the door for an event. This strategy supports our vision of a desired future that includes being the best facility we can be. An excellent facility will encourage participation and creative activity while improving quality of life, developing community identity and a sense of place, which all contribute to the local economy through practicing the arts. And so I will pass this on now to Crystal Lorette.
Okay, thank you. So we kind of wanted to put that together because a lot of the councillors are new and maybe not understand how we work with the city. So the city owns the building and it's run by a nonprofit society, which is us. So I'd like to continue on with some statistics for last year. And so this is our usage. So for the community, you can see is 80%, which is obviously the majority. And so we had 353 community bookings last year. And out of those bookings, 157 required volunteers. And the school district, which we have a lease agreement with them as well, so they came in at 76 bookings, and 8 of those needed volunteers, which equates to 17% of our usage. Touring groups, which is down a little bit this year, is 15, which is about 3%, and all of those needed volunteers. So our total bookings for the entire year of 365 days is 444. So quite often we have multiple events in one day, like today. So I will be reading through this, and then if time permits, we will have our treasurer speak, and then I will have about 1,000 people waiting for me. So I've got to head out soon. So we have an amazing volunteer group. We have 130 volunteers who help us out in all capacities during the season. They provide backstage and front of house services. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that, that would be the greeters in the front, the ticket takers, the ushers, people running the bars, the coffee juice, and also up in the sound booth. We're also an educational facility because we do train. So quite often this happens within the school district. And that was kind of part of why the building was created in the first place, from what I understand. So through our annual and ongoing volunteer orientation and shadowing program, we are able to retain our volunteer base, which a lot of people are jealous of this because we have a wonderful program in place and obviously it works. We rely on our volunteers to help us operate the facility as there are only 2 staff members for the entire building. Last year, we had 165 events that required volunteers, needing on average about 10 per event, with about a 5-hour shift, which equates to 8,250 volunteer hours. But that doesn't include community musicals. So we did Les Mis last spring, and they generate the following volunteer hours: 95 cast, crew, and orchestra. So about 9 hours per week, and that was being kind of, yeah, we could have went for more. Some people obviously dedicated more than 9 hours, but I just averaged it out for about 12 weeks, which is 10,260 volunteer hours on top of the 82,550. So yeah, we're pretty fortunate. We also saw 48,000 patrons come through our doors last season. This is on par with our last season, as we had similar types of events that attracted larger audiences. Last year we did the Metal Shop Show during Seafest, which is huge, and we had some other great fundraisers that were well attended. Once again, the theatre welcomed a wide range of events, including a diverse array of cultural performances, seminars, lectures, commencement ceremonies, dance, theatre, and numerous school district events. Performing arts events by professionals, amateurs, students, and children delighted audience throughout the year. We continue to research and apply for additional sources of funding. This is ongoing. We have made application to the BC Touring Council for the amount of $7,500 to assist with artist fees. So this is for touring artists, and so it helps us to offset those kind of costs. Additionally, we will be applying to Creative Spaces, Heritage Canada, and the Prince Rupert Port Authority for support with our equipment replacement initiative. We were very fortunate in 2010 to receive $150,000 from the Prince Rupert Port Authority Community Investment Fund, and so we are working on lighting the way. That's our new project. We need all new theater lights, and they are not cheap. So we have 200, and we're looking at probably about maybe $250,000. But, it's not something we're going to do in a year. We're going to be working with other funding sources and try to get some matching funds for that. The board continues to provide leadership and prudent financial management for the society, with our staff and exceptional volunteers continue to excel at operating the theatre on a day-to-day basis. We are very grateful for the annual contribution that the City of Prince Rupert gives us. The Society continues to operate reasonably and finish the year with a small surplus. Through our Capital Improvement Fund, a partnership with the school district, and a grant from the Prince Rupert Community Foundation, we were able to purchase new aluminum-framed portable staging and music risers at the cost of $25,000. So as you see, we finished the year with about $20,000. That was mainly due to our fundraising efforts and also applying to the Community Foundation and the school district to partner to get those new risers, because ours were really at their, they had reached their lifetime limit. They were wooden, and when you screw into them and screw out of them so many times, they do fray and fall apart, and they were unsafe. So I'm happy to say that we got some. Our city has developed a strong arts community through the years of dedicated volunteers and arts advocates. This has enriched the lives of our residents and has filled a need in our city that benefits from cultural activities, which also contributes to the local economy. And I say that because every year we put on events and people do come from out of town, as well as the week-long dance competition, which definitely generates a lot of money in the economy during that week. In keeping with the belief that the arts belong to the entire community, we are constantly striving to create and maintain a state-of-the-art facility for everyone to enjoy now and well into the future. And as you probably are well aware that we are creeping up to be about 30 years old and things are starting to fail. And so we can talk about that later, but we're not going to put a damper on things. The quality of life in our little neck of the woods is undoubtedly richer because of the arts, and for this we are truly blessed. And lastly, the Leicester Centre of the Arts has had many visitors from all over the world, both on stage and in the audience, who attribute its existence to a community with vision, imagination, and pride. And you would not believe how many artists, like I'll just off the top of my head, Colin James, because he was kind of one of the bigger ones we've just had in the last couple of years. And he said that he has played in he doesn't know how many theaters. And he said this was one of the nicest ones to play in, one of the top. So we are really lucky. Also, I get people calling and coming to see us on a yearly basis sometimes that they're bigger centers than we are that don't have anything even close to what we have. So we really need to maintain our little jewel. Okay, so I'm going to pass it on to Tony, who's going to talk to, or maybe we'll switch seats.
Right. Maybe not. Maybe I'll switch. So I'm just going to touch on some of the highlights of the of our budget. In 2013, we budgeted for both revenues and expenses $245,900. Our actuals for 2013 in revenues came in at $286,387, and there was an increase due to about 4 main factors. So if you have a copy of your variance notes, the first one is ticket sales. Like Crystal had mentioned, we had budgeted for 26,000, and our actuals came in at 40,656, which saw an increase of 14,656. And this was attributed to more tickets that were sold to events that were produced and presented here locally. The second increase was due to rentals. We had budgeted for 70,900, and we actually came in at 82,505, which saw an increase of 11,605. And this had to do with more rentals from the community as well as more touring groups. Our concession sales were budgeted for $7,000, and we received 13,911 with an increase of 6,911. There were stronger than average bar sales during these performances due to increased ticket sales. And our other last revenue item was budgeted for $15,000, and we actually came in at $25,668, which saw an increase of $10,668. And there was addition of more season sponsors, an increase in membership donations, successful fundraising events, and individual community donations. Now the expenses, we also, because of that, we also saw an increase in on the expense side of the expenses came in at, the actuals came in at $266,212, and the overage was due to two main factors. One of them were performance fees, budgeted for $18,000, which were actually came in at $27,777. So we saw an overage of $9,777, which brought in additional, because we brought in additional shows that were touring in the region. Of course, maintenance and repairs were budgeted at $11,500, and our actuals were at $21,913. So we saw an overage of $10,413. And of course, this is due to unforeseen technical equipment repairs, bar fridge repairs, increased janitorial services due to the increase in usage of our facility. So like Crystal had already mentioned, that our revenue over expenditure, we saw a surplus of $20,175, which goes directly into our capital improvement fund used to maintain and purchase technical equipment. Okay, so that is our report.
In our application, we had originally asked for $114,000 to operate. The extra 4,000 was to go to the cost of liability insurance, which I've included a letter with the package, and it's from the Municipal Insurance Association saying that they will be extending our coverage ongoing. And so which was really good news to us because that was something I looked into last year because it was it was brought to our attention that we may not be covered. And so that was a big concern because our volunteers and our board is also covered under this. So anyways, we do request the 110,000 and it's actually in the application. So we need that for operating purposes. And we, over the years, I looked at the last time, we've been receiving 110,000. Obviously, we've been able to keep up with that. It is a struggle, we know that, but we also know that the city was struggling as well, and we work closely with the city. So we put on some extra fundraisers. We worked really hard the board has been working as well as the staff. Also, we have cut things and we just can't cut anymore. And it seems like as we looked at our maintenance and repairs, it seems like we're looking more at repairing things as they get older. Part of the agreement we have with the city is our part is to maintain the technical equipment of the building, which we do. So obviously we have to do that in order to keep doing what we do, performances and things like that. So yeah, any questions?
Councillor McKinney?
Thank you. I just want to say, Crystal, the job that you people do, your whole board is absolutely fantastic, and especially like your volunteers. It's just wonderful. And just for the benefit of the new council, I know very well, because I have been on that board, that they have 2 employees, Crystal and one other girl, and they even clean the washrooms. They do that themselves. So they're not out there, and whatever they ask for, they certainly deserve. And I would just like to compliment you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kinney. Just to verify that, it is another gentleman, James. He's my technical director. So he's cute, but
Sorry,
not that
James.
cute. That's okay.
Well, it's a technical job. Any further questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Oh, great. I make it back in time.
There you go.
Thank you.
Do you want to tell Lee you can come back and be mayor now?
We've taken him off board. He doesn't know that.
Oh, good.
I kind of like it up here. I don't think I'm going to move.
Never mind.
So lofty.
Okay, next up, thank you, Councillor Cunningham, for keeping my seat warm. Next, we have the library. Welcome.
Thank you.
Joe, how do you pronounce your last name? My apologies.
Thank you. It's Salvitro.
Salvitro. Okay.
Oh, you got it. All the trustees, please. Oh, I'd like to give the council and the mayor some, I did email these, but I realized they did a format change and they came out a mess, so I don't, you want to do one.
Mr. Delvitro, the mic's right there as well. The green button is how you turn it on. Thanks, Rose.
There we go. Thank you. Okay, thank you. As I said, Your Worship, Council, I appreciate and we appreciate the opportunity to speak and make our case for the library. I am Joe Zelvitro, as I said, the Chief Librarian of the Prince Rupert Library, and with me are several trustees from the Prince Rupert Library Board. Beginning to my left, Tim McDonald, our Board Chair, Lauren Williams, Glenn Grew, and Dale White. We'll be here to make our presentation. You have our application. I have a short online presentation, then we'll be glad to answer any questions. So we'll start with a quote. We like words at the library, so we'll start there. This is actually from England, but it's appropriate here. A library in the middle of a community is a cross between an emergency exit, a life raft, and a festival. On a cold, rainy island, there are only the sheltered public spaces where you are not a consumer, but a citizen instead. Because some of you are relatively new, I wanted to make sure you knew what the library is about. We all have our own notions, and but I wanted you to know what we do. This is part of our mission statement, has been for several decades, and we assemble, preserve, and administer and organize collections, books, and related educational and recreational material in order to promote, through guidance and stimulation, in the communication of ideas and enlighten citizenship and enrich personal lives. We serve the community as a center of reliable information. We support the educational, civic, and cultural activities of community groups. Well, basically, we strive to bring needed information to our community. We maintain collections of information. That includes a lot of print materials, and we don't do it just by ourselves. We get a lot of help from different sources, from both within and outside of Prince Rupert. This is an example of this year. The Northern Health Authority gave us a grant to update our health resources, which is rather important. They gave us several $1,000s. Other community groups have funded us as well to upgrade our Literacy First Nations collection. Here we have the first person represent the second one. The first one represents North Coast Literacy Network. The second, Success by Six, an important advocate group for children under the age of 6 and the importance of literacy. And myself, and then finally Glenn Grew, representative of Settlement Services here in Prince Rupert. Their logos. And Glenn, I got to get a logo from your organization. As well as print collections, we have much more. We have digital collections. Items which only exist in electronic devices such as tablets, PCs, and smartphones. The library's subscription ebook and audiobook service is popular, and on that fact sheet, I didn't like that. On that fact sheet I gave you, you can see just a quick blurb. We have about 2,400 circulations of electronic books or audio books this year alone, in 2013. In 2014, we actually have a bit more, but it's not finished yet, so I don't have that number. Another collection we have is called Zinio, which is an online subscription platform for mainstream magazines that are available free to Prince Rupert Library members. It's also popular, and again, on the quick fact sheet, we see that almost 2,000 circulations in 2013. And our final electronic collection is, we have a set of databases that vary from auto repair to EBSCOhost, science, medical, business, etc. And our subscription contains more of just to these databases alone contains more information than several hundred encyclopedias. You can see that in the quick facts again that our patrons are using these online resources. Although it's still about less than 5% of the total because print materials are still popular, it's been growing each year, and eventually we suspect it may equal, but it's hard to tell the future. Please note that these resources are free to our users, to the patrons, to people who have library cards, but the library pays for these thousands of dollars as part of our collection budget or through provincial grants. There we go here. As we saw in the mission statement, information alone is not enough. It's also necessary to help inform people how to get what they need and to obtain their goals. These are some of the few books we've helped local authors published through helping them with research. The first one details the working lives of those who built some of the best wooden boats in BC, the Walls, who had shops across the water in Dodge Cove as well as here in Prince Rupert. This year's publication, Wink and Blink and Nod, the middle one there, was done by a local artist, Coral Keane, my apologies. And the final one is an author from away who needed research done about early telegraph history in northern BC. The next one, he's no longer in Prince Rupert, he's down on Gabriola Island. But Ian Lawrence started as a writer, newspaper writer here in Prince Rupert, and became a very successful children's book writer, indeed winning the Governor General's Award. And our present deputy librarian has a few dedications in those books from her long time work with him. As well, she was instrumental in publishing this book, authored by our own Prince Rupert Archives. So we understand the history of our own community as well. As well as, let's see what's next. Okay. As well as serving people who come into the library, we reach out to the community. We use technology too to connect with those who are more comfortable with it. We use Facebook, Twitter. You see, we have in one way, we have 571 people who like us, that follow our Facebook. The library, as opposed to other parties or celebrities, are very geographically based. So we're not expecting a huge number because it's just locals who are really interested in this. But they support us and they get aware of what we're doing through this. Another social media site we use is Pinterest, where we share ideas for displays, get ideas for collections, staff processes, etc. It's very helpful as well. We also reach out in the real world. Here we have an example of the library at the annual literacy fair at the mall each March. And even here we meet people that don't always come in, but will come in afterwards to see ebooks or print books or magazines, whatever. We know the need to bring in money and bring in connections. And this is an example of how we also bring in cash through product sales, as well as demonstrating our traditional services. These two shots were taken at the North Pacific Cannery during May this year, during the 100th anniversary of CN Rail. We had a good crowd there, and we made several $100s as well, so it doesn't hurt. As well as that, we have technical services, public internet access, and free Wi-Fi. People come in who don't have computers, who don't have internet access, and it is a necessary part of a society today. And Wi-Fi, they might have their own computers but don't have internet access, or visitors, etc. However, each of you are familiar with computers, and no doubt have customized your own PCs or smartphone, laptop to do what you want. And depending upon your technological experience, it might be easy or hard. When we serve potentially everybody, that is, people who are very familiar with computers and just theirs might be broken or might need access to a printer, people who haven't a clue, and they'll come in, and we have to be prepared for anything. We still get people bringing these in. And for the young ones, probably don't even recognize what this is. It's a floppy disk, but we have it to maintain a computer so that if people come in, we do this. Mr. Kessler helped set this up, your city IT manager, and he knows the importance of maintaining a secure and integral computer network. And he's lucky. He has a very exclusive set of people who he can deal with, and he can make controls. At the library, we want to help those who don't have the talents or have different demands, and that requires us to have some skills too, and that's very demanding. I put these next few slides up for you to understand not only are the demands coming from people, but government, especially federal, but also provincial governments have downloaded a lot of services on this. We get people coming in who need to, fishermen who need to apply for EI, and they're told when they look up online, go to the public library. Service Canada, employment insurance benefits, same thing. Here, how you can get your national online licensing for shrimp fishermen came in. And not only that, the people who don't have the technical expertise, they probably don't have an email address either. So we have to teach them that. And we have to make recommendations, and that's difficult because if you want a secure, safe email system, you should pay for it. However, some people don't have the means, and then we have to teach them everything. And we like it, and we do it, and we'll continue doing it, but it's extra demands that we don't have the funding for. And again, even our Northern Health, when they make applications, it's online. A lot of professionals don't have problems, but sometimes their computers break down. But the people who can have more entry-level jobs don't know how to do this, and we give instructions for that. That's just an example of the things we have to do technically. And of course, outside the technical, we're happy to do the old ways as well as the new. And here we have an example of some of our regular programs, such as a story time, and we do other children's and adult programming. We have serious and fun matters. Here we have a poet who recently got her PhD and came up and spoke with people about domestic violence and overcoming it and what people can do. It was a very moving event we had recently. And much more fun one was a magician who had over 50 kids there, and there was a lot of laughter that day. But stuff like that goes on all the time each year. Although another Vickers, Roy Henry, he's more well known as a painter, and he's famous up in BC. And again, these are the type of events we regularly run. And this one happened recently. We had a CBC LNG panel discussion here. Lots of people, over 100 that day. Now this is one value that is unique to the library. It's that we can connect the internet with people with needs who are concerned about their community with the information needed. We bring it together in one place. You don't find this anywhere else where you can gather all this together and have people access it when they need it. And this is something that we were proud of. This September, we tried a pilot project. We opened for 4 hours each Mondays. We have not been open on Mondays since February of 2010. And we've seen that there is a demand for increased access to the library. These numbers mean 21% increase per week in patron traffic since opening on Mondays. I point that out because some people thought that if we were just open Tuesday to Saturday, everybody would squeeze in the time available. But we've found that, no, there's been an overall increase in our numbers since that opening. And although people were occasionally waiting outside on Mondays, not everybody knew. And in end of November, early December, we got a 42% increase in Monday traffic just from the beginning of September to now. And overall, our average number of patrons per hour has increased from 45 to 53. And this is what we do and why we ask you to support the library with our requested funding in 2015, and remember that all our patrons and supporters are important and are respected. Thank you. Any questions? I'll be glad.
Thank you for that. Any questions from council? I'll just say thank you very much for your guys' presentation, and I also had a great day that day reading to the kids. So yeah.
Well,
And
thank you.
You guys do a great service for the community, and I think everybody appreciates everything the library does. So thank you again.
All right, thank you, and come to the library.
Thanks, guys. Just seeing if our next speaker is here, which I'm not sure. Are they? Oh, Mr. Farwell's here. Okay, so Tourism Prince Rupert is next. Welcome, Mr. Farwell.
Thank you, Worship. I'm not supposed to be alone here, but Jack Payne should be joining me, as well as Rodney Cross. We're all rushing from work. Thanks, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you, Scott.
Mr. Mayor. Hope I kept one for myself. Right.
Did you just want to get started, or?
Sure, I will.
Yeah.
I will honor your guys' time and commitments and such.
Sure.
So I'll start, and Mr. Payne and Mr. Prosky may join me as we proceed, and Mr. Jack is going to present the part with regards to the budget there. So, but, like I can
Sure.
So I thought this evening we'd spend a little bit of time just going through Tourism Prince Rupert and what the organization is and how we operate for the benefit of the new councillors. So Tourism Prince Rupert, our mandate is to increase the economic activity in Prince Rupert through our visitor spending and to support small and develop small and medium-sized businesses. Ultimately to generate some additional revenues into Prince Rupert and generate tax revenue for the city of Prince Rupert. We're there to help encourage and develop the services to improve the quality of life for our residents. And of note, Prince Rupert is one of the 5 British Columbia communities that's grandfathered into the 2% hotel tax. And I'll touch base on that here in a couple of moments as well to let you know what the significance of that is. So Tourism Prince Rupert is a non-profit society governed by a volunteer board of directors. Some are appointed by the city of Prince Rupert and others are elected through our annual general meeting. We're responsible for marketing, tourism management, and as of last year, visitor services with the operating of the Visitor Information Center. Currently, we subcontract our services from partners including Northern BC Tourism and the Prince Rupert Port Authority. Historically, Prince Rupert Tourism has maintained a staff of previously in 2012, 2013, we had a CEO and we had a director of marketing. And due to budgetary challenges, we sought partnership with Northern BC Tourism to do the core marketing for us, provide the staffing to do that. So we were able to significantly decrease our administrative costs and into that contract. The Port Authority is our subcontractor and operate the Visitor Information Center as of beginning April of 2014. What I referred to there is with regards to the legislation. So under the original legislation of 1999, the City of Prince Rupert, with the legislation of the 2% hotel tax, is required by that provincial legislation to continue to fund Tourism Prince Rupert at an annual rate not less than what they were providing back in 1999 when that legislation came into effect. However, that hasn't been the case. I commonly refer to it, we want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. We're understanding of the fiscal challenges in the community and of the City of Prince Rupert, and we want to recognize that. However, the interesting thing with that is, as one of those first 5 communities, there was ourselves, Victoria, Vancouver, Whistler, and Nanaimo. We instituted the 2% hotel tax. The other communities in the province that have that tax after that initial 5 have what they refer to as a sunset clause. So every 5 years, the hotels within the area can review and have an opportunity to vote in favor or oppose the 2% hotel tax, and they can remove it if they so wish. Prince Rupert, we don't have that. And so back in 1999 when they introduced that, one of the ideas was that it was not, this hotel tax wasn't there to take the place of existing financial contribution through the municipalities or what have you. However, that's changed, and we recognize that. So our volunteer board, there's a list of names up there. We have a diverse board with myself as a chair, John Farrell from representing Opa Sushi and Cowboy Cafe, Ken Velman from the Port of Prince Rupert, Jack Payne from the the Harbor, Rodney Proskew is an independent charter operator, Melanie Frizzell from Hawk Air, Mary Bartlett was just elected to our board here at our AGM, representing CFNR. Excuse me. Michael Sluka was appointed by the City of Prince Rupert, and Barry Cunningham, councillor appointee for the City of Prince Rupert. What was I going to say about that? So, under our current bylaws, to be elected as a director of Tourism Prince Rupert, you have to be appointed. You have to be a member of the organization. Currently, our our organization has historically had about 30 to 40 members, so not very significant. We are in the works of changing our bylaws and looking at realigning the organization to be a stakeholder model. We spoke about that last year when we were here, and the significance of that is with the stakeholder model, we would go out and we would represent every business within the community to better represent our community, and also to make it so it's more visitor centric. So as people are looking at coming to Prince Rupert, instead of seeing I believe 4 restaurants that have historically been members, they will see all the restaurants in Prince Rupert, or they will see all the charter operators, or all the hotels, or the bed and breakfast and such, rather than it being limited to the people who chose to pay $75 to be a member. Our goal is to rewrite those bylaws and present them here to council early in the spring, and then hold an AGM to change our organization to that stakeholder model. Come on in, Rodney. That's okay. Jack's later than you.
You can come up here if you'd like.
So the industry, the tourism industry, we're continuing to see changes in the landscape in 2013 to 2014. Of course, we had some cutbacks with BC Ferries, reduced their schedule by 23% from Port Hardy to Prince Rupert, significant change. We've seen changes in our regional tourism British Columbia, or Destinations BC is what it's referred to as currently. We're seeing additional changes unfold. I was in attendance at the Destination BC launch here in November down in Vancouver, and they're looking at making some significant reductions in what they are seeing as duplication of services through the regional destination marketing organizations, which Northern BC Tourism would be our organization that represents us on on the international stage. So they're looking at making some changes there again, which could ultimately impact us and our ability to continue with reduced administrative costs if we have to go back to a model that has employees versus contracted Northern BC Tourism if they cease to exist. Adjustments to the ferry schedule, labor challenges, and new industrial developments are all factors in our forward planning. Interestingly to note, Tourism Prince Rupert is a beneficiary of the 2% hotel tax. A significant portion of that increase in hotel room tax has come from a large number of the industrial project developments that are underway or ongoing or in the planning stages. So it's twofold. So we're the beneficiary of the 2% hotel tax, but we're also challenged with occupancy constraints through our busy summer season to continue to do any additional marketing to try to fill hotel rooms that through June, July, and August are very, very challenging to find. Many new businesses to Prince Rupert and providing opportunities for further partnership and engagement with regards to some of our business, like Prince Rupert Adventure Tours. It's a critical component to our tourism success. Our fishing charter operators are truly a critical component, as is the North Pacific Cannery and the Northern BC Museum as well. All critical components to ensuring people travel to our community and stay, or hopefully we can lengthen their stay. I'll do a quick look at our markets. So the biggest market to Prince Rupert, believe it or not, is Canada. And of that, it's mostly people from within BC that are traveling to our community. Mr. Payne, sir. Tourism Prince Rupert's taken that lead, and we've significantly increased our marketing along our Highway 16 corridor and throughout BC and into Alberta. As we see, that's a critical market. We are no longer doing any direct marketing into the U.S. and international markets. As you can see, these next couple of slides will show. All that marketing is being done through Northern BC Tourism, who has historically done that as well. We used to attend some shows down into New York and that kind of a thing, but really for the money that we were spending, the return on that investment wasn't significant for us to continue along that path. And international, it shows you our breakdown there of the German, the UK. The interesting thing with international tourists and the USA tourists is that they have a higher yield when they're traveling here. They're traveling here, usually spending more money for their trip. It's most of the part, it's a trip of a lifetime versus somebody coming in from a Terrace or Smithers for the weekend. However, you see that the numbers at BC and our region is significantly a larger contributor overall. However, the international is a key market because of that higher yield and higher spend. Travel trade. So travel trade is working with our various tour operators throughout the world and such. Again, all done through Northern BC Tourism. We'll host some FAMs here, and we'll have Northern BC Tourism attend some of these opportunities on our behalf. So you can see Canada, US are highlighted there as our key markets, with Germany, Netherlands, and UK. Emerging markets are being shown there. We're doing some work there, but again, it's very small and very just starting there. So new product identification, operator readiness. So we're helping some of our local operators be ready to sell internationally, because there are some laws, international laws, that govern how you can sell tourism product around the world. Tour operator meetings. We're meeting with operators within the community. Sales training. There's a slide next here that shows where we're doing some sales training throughout down in Vancouver, in Calgary, and to Montreal, where we participate in teaching the salespeople who are selling our products what Prince Rupert has to offer and such. And sometimes those people will join us here in Prince Rupert to have a look. So again, travel trade is provided through our partnership with Northern BC Tourism. Northern BC Tourism on our behalf has attended these travel trade shows. So Northern Tourist Association in the US, Rendezvous Canada, which this year, I can't even remember what the heck it was. I think it was in Ottawa. CTAP, I'm not aware of. It's a very small emerging market for us. Canada's West Marketplace was just attended in Calgary here, in Canmore, Alberta, just a few weeks back. In addition, Jill from Northern BC Tourism has, on our behalf, done sales calls and training with John View, which is the largest tour wholesaler into British Columbia, into Canada, internationally. Anderson's Vacations, Brewster Vacations, another significant player for Prince Rupert, as well as BC Ferries Vacations out of the Lower Mainland, which sometimes comes under some debate down in Vancouver if that's a wise investment for BC Ferries, but I'll show you some interesting facts about it here in a moment. 2014 highlights, we hosted some FAM tours through Prince Rupert, a couple of them of real significance, including the Rendezvous Canada group FAM after the fact. So these folks from around the world are going to Rendezvous Canada to learn about the products offered for sale or communities of interest. And after the fact, they attended Prince Rupert to partake in some of the events. The picture on the right is showing a German key account VIP FAM. Now that group of people around the table, besides myself and a couple of others, represent the key German tour operators. These folks are hosted every year in Canada by the Canadian Tourism Commission and Tourism British Columbia, or Destinations BC, and usually brought over, and they give them carte blanche to do what they like and where they want to go and that kind of a thing. They chose this year to come to Prince Rupert and Haida Gwaii. So we hosted them for 3 days. They went salmon fishing. They were whale watching Kootsmateen with Prince Rupert Adventure Tours. North Pacific Cannery, we went out there for dinner and a tour, and then they had a day to spend around themselves. The significance of this group here is that 13 people around the table represent 76% of all tourist dollars leaving the country of Germany. First time it's ever happened in Prince Rupert, and probably won't be for a number more years, but they had a spectacular trip. These people today are selling our product in Germany, and they saw lots of opportunities where they could sell additional product, which was interesting. Travel media, this is just some highlights of different things that have been published throughout the different magazines and such through Prince Rupert. Now this is all done where these people will come into Prince Rupert, they'll write a story and they'll publish it in these magazines. We couldn't even come close to affording to be able to buy this kind of advertising. This ad here alone with regards to, this is an article that was done on Divide Rides out of Prince Rupert, guys that are making skis, snowboards. That I believe that one cover page there was as a value of about $25,000 to it. So if we had to pay for it, we wouldn't be doing that. Tourism marketing, so Tourism Prince Rupert, all we do is consumer marketing, so direct campaigns and that kind of a thing. Facebook, social media, digital asset management, image and video shoot that we did this past year. BC Ferries campaign, so BC Ferries does direct bookings with a number of our members. And of course they sell ferries to get here, and sometimes they'll use the airlines to have people fly back. So it's a print and online television and online campaign. It generated $1.1 million in direct bookings through our area. 601 packages were sold and 1,391 travelers attended, coming up through BC Ferries, staying at our various hotels, properties, going on Prince Rupert Adventure Tours, going salmon fishing, and that kind of idea. So it is a significant contribution into our region and one of our larger marketing expenditures. Regional campaign, this last year we spent a significant amount of money on Highway 16 corridor, Northward Magazine with CFNR, CHDK, CFDK, and Facebook on regional campaigns, trying to get our neighbors to come and visit Prince Rupert once or even more often. So, and had some great success with that. Again, just a little bit of a show of different ads that we had running. Oh, sorry, these ads here were specifically to the BC Ferries campaign that we ran. So these are ads that we placed in the province, Vancouver Sun, and ran online. As well, we had some advertising going on global. You may have saw some of in the morning news. You'll see some of that stuff where they visit Prince Rupert, that kind of stuff. This was recently in Northward Magazine, and I believe this is the one regional one that we just ran here for the Winterfest and through Christmas shopping and stuff into Prince Rupert. The one on the right is last year's Escape the Crowd sports fishing advertisement. We have a new updated one that we just did this past, just coming out here in the next couple of weeks in BC Outdoor Magazine. Some Facebook posts. Of course, social media is a significant game changer out there. Northern BC Tourism looks after all of our Facebook, the formal Facebook posts that we're doing, kind of a thing, and then we'll encourage our members and such to get involved and help spread that word as well. But they're leading that charge. They have a lady up there named Tasha who is of that demographic that understands this stuff and lives and breathes it, and she has done an amazing job with that. So Visitor Information Center, this past year we took over the management of those services, contracted that to the Port of Prince Rupert as the key anchor center. And we introduced 10 iPad kiosks throughout the community late in July, where visitors are able to access information outside of those normal hours of operation of the Visitor Information Center. So the anchor center is relocated into the Port Interpretive Center in it was April 2014, late April. The interesting note there is the Visitor Information Center at the port this year saw an increase of 23% of visitors coming in this year over last year. So they did 9,026 visitors between April and the end of September. And last year at the museum, it was 7,174 visitors. So we saw an increase there. Now, those are people that they directly came in looking for visitor information. They also track people that come into the Port Interpretive Center as well as a separate number. So the total into the Port Interpretive Center for both purposes, VIC and Port Interpretive, was over 15,000 visitors through that building. That just shows you the highlight of the facilities down there. And an image shoot. So traditionally, Prince Rupert, we didn't own our images. We had actual arrangement where I'll use the word, leased the images on an annual basis from a local photographer, gave us the rights to use them on our website and in our visitor guide. This year, we hired a couple of, or 2 or 3 people to go around and shoot images of Prince Rupert. It was a significant investment. However, the good news out of that is we now own, I think roughly in our digital asset management system, we have roughly 3,000 images that we own as a community. So the significance of that is now Tourism Prince Rupert can use those for any advertising that we do. We can pass them on to any of our members, stakeholders for their use in any of their advertising or what have you. And we can also share them with the City of Prince Rupert, the Port Authority, or anybody that needs to do any marketing or advertising around the world or needs access to those images. So we have them, they're readily available, and we're happy to share them. We'll continue to do some additional investment into images and such, because it's one of those things where you always need to have a fresh set of images and such for the marketing purposes. And one of the parts of that, and you'll see it's coming out in our visitor information or visitor guide and in our website redesign here shortly, is we're trying to capture some of the flavor of Prince Rupert and some of the character of Prince Rupert. And we think that's one of the things that make us unique. Instead of it looking at just another whale or just another fish, we think that the people here in Prince Rupert that are critical to our overall success and people's experience here, be it a gentleman making jewelry down the bottom there, or Ted from Breakers in the middle of the screen. Yes, Ted from Breakers is a character, and I think we should highlight him. But it really is part of what tells the story of Prince Rupert and makes it quite unique. And so a lot of our video and image shooting this last year has followed along that line. So that's what I have to offer to share with you with regards to that. And I believe Mr. Payne will cover off our financial request for this year. Mr. Payne? I think this one here is that's the one here.
got them up here?
No, they're not up there.
We passed them out though?
I passed them out.
Thank you. So Tourism Prince Rupert is, and I guess we've talked a little bit about the history of our finance.
History, yeah.
Okay.
They go to historic detail of our finances.
Okay. Tourism Prince Rupert, I think, is in better shape than it's been for some time. We have given you here the financial statements. We have them current up to October 31st, 2014, and include the financials for 2013, which have been completed and filed, I guess, with our society annual report. Basically, the year's total. I'm not sure how much detail do we want to go into here with this.
I think we can talk about the high points of our revenue and our
Okay.
surplus.
Okay. Apologize for the lateness. I thought we were starting at 6 o'clock.
The first speakers were very quick.
Very quick.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I heard
That's
my name
good.
being called as I was outside. I went,
Oh, okay. I was going to apologize, but oh, okay.
No worries.
Well, I was here before 6, I think. 1 minute before. Yeah. Okay. So for 20. So we're going to bother with 2013, or?
We can talk for sure.
Okay. Okay, 2013, we've completed the year. That was the first full year of operation that we had. We kind of got started a little bit late, and as Scott was pointing out, trying to get our marketing programs underway and getting the digital assets and getting our media and information that we need to actually produce marketing programs was a little bit delayed, so that in the end we ended up having to hit the ground running, but didn't have enough material to build our marketing program out fully. So I guess in a way we've been kind of a victim of our own success in a way, in terms of controlling costs, changing the way that we run Tourism Prince Rupert, and so our total revenues for 2013 were 370,000. And you can see there that we ended up, the differences between the 2 years, you can see that 2013 was the year that we made a lot of the changes. So wages, salaries, overhead, and things that way that Tourism Prince Rupert originally ran was comprising probably 75% of the budget, of 72.8, I think, percent of the budget was overhead of our office, administration, wages, that kind of thing, and there was approximately a quarter of our revenue was available for marketing, and we've been able to actually turn those numbers upside down now by changing the way that we manage Tourism Prince Rupert, by contracting with Northwest BC Tourism to manage our affairs, reducing costs, fixed costs of operation, and freeing up more money to use for marketing purposes. And so there's quite a marked difference between 2013 and 2014 in terms of the cost structure. Revenue is roughly the same, but we're able to redirect it to places where we can produce, we think, more results for our members and for our community in terms of visitor services. And so was any questions? The surplus that we're showing for 2014 shows at $144,000 right now, and part of this is the reason for that extra surplus is because we haven't had the opportunity to build out all the programs that we had planned to do. If you don't have the resources to do marketing with images and that sort of thing, you have to build that first, and so we're working on that. So we're kind of a little bit behind the eight ball with that. But for 2014 and 2015, or 2015 rather, we feel we'll be getting more into the swing of things and getting our programs underway. And we have a 2015 budget here.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to take that? Sure. Okay.
So as Jack was highlighting, in 2013 we had a surplus of 69,000, and in 2014 roughly 144,000 was showing there now, for a combined total of about 216,000. Now, in addition to that, we will have, I forecast that we're going to have about a $40,000 increase in additional 2% hotel tax come to the organization. However, we have about 70 to $80,000 in unbilled expenses that are coming through or have come through in November and December. So leave us with a surplus of around $150,000, $170,000 at the end of the year, which is actually a good thing. Historically, Tourism Prince Rupert back in 2012 and before would come to council in early January, February, March, and have to get an advance on our hotel tax so that we could pay our bills, book our ads, and that kind of a thing. So now it gives us the autonomy to go out and do what we need to do without having to come here and ask for money in advance. Actually, in 2012, we owed the city of Prince Rupert $30,000 because they had advanced too much money on the hotel room tax, and we didn't collect enough at the end of the year. And so we were always in this negative position, which fortunately we're not in anymore. If you look at the 2015 marketing budget, the hotel room tax we're budgeting to be at $220,000. We've been around that number for the last couple of years now. That's going to give or take depending on, again, some of this industrial development such. Municipal grant, Tourism Prince Rupert and VIC were requesting $31,500 total this year. If you look back to 2014, between the two organizations, the Visitor Information Center and Tourism Prince Rupert, we received a total of $99,000. 70,000 for the VIC, and 29,000 for Tourism Prince Rupert. And if you go back again to 2013, I believe the number was 147,000 between those two organizations. So our reliance on the municipality has decreased significantly from a couple of years ago. We were asking for six figures.
Sorry to interrupt. So you're only asking for 31.5?
31.5.
Ms. Bombin, on the updated sheet here, it says Tourism Prince Rupert's 135,000. Is that a mistake?
That is not. That when we were asked to submit our original budget, our request, we submitted a budget for 135,000.
Okay.
However, we've looked within our organization, saw where we had savings, where we've done, we've been prudent managers of the money, and come to the realization that we didn't feel right coming to the city and asking for 135,000.
I was just checking.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. That's probably not very common. People come in and ask for less than they actually started with. I understand. It's not a normal happening.
Thanks.
You'll see further down highlighted in bold there, the DBC grant for the Visitor Information Center is 20,000. We've been confirmed this year for the Visitor Information Center that Destinations BC will fund us for $20,000, which is unique as well, because usually we're waiting until the end of March to find out that we have that budget. So that's confirmed, which is nice. Of significant expenses, they're all listed here, and significant expenses, the web design of $40,000. We're going to go out and redesign our website. It's tired. It was originally designed in 2008, and there's been some small investments made on an annual basis that really haven't kept us up to where we need to be on that front. Core marketing, Northern BC Tourism, milepost, and regional campaigns of $70,000. This last year in 2014, I believe we were around the $61,000 mark that we spent in those areas. And historically, in Prince Rupert, in 2013, the amount we spent in there was $6,200. So it's a significant investment where we've actually had some money now to put back into the marketing areas. Visitor guide, you'll see an expense there of $60,000. We have a $50,000 of advertising sales to offset that. However, we're also making an investment where we've hired writers to rewrite the magazine, rewrite our website, and complete redesign of those two vehicles as well. In addition to that, you'll see Northern BC Tourism contract with Tourism Prince Rupert. So we're looking to renew that contract with Northern BC Tourism to continue to provide us the marketing services through Jill Fisher and Tasha and Clint Fraser and such out of Northern BC Tourism to continue with that. And the visitor center services activities, the subcontract with the service provider VIC of $51,500 is the Port of Prince Rupert. So that's to operate and man and staff and manage the visitor information center at a cost of $51,500. So you might realize that the $51,500 to run the VIC with the port, subtracting the $20,000 we received from the Destinations BC, has left us with the $31,500 that we're requesting from the city to fund Tourism Prince Rupert / the Visitor Information Center. So what we're really looking for is for the city to provide that funding to operate the Visitor Information Center. Now, historically on its own, the Visitor Information Center was roughly about a $70,000 request from the municipality, and now it's down to $31,500. In addition to that, we have our visitor information kiosks throughout the community. We have 10 of them. We're looking to add additional ones to it, and we're looking at developing some additional programming on those and replacing the existing programming to make it a little more user friendly and get people so they're more engaged in it with some video and that kind of a thing. So we have a proposed expense there of $25,000 as well, which will overall run us a budgeted deficit of $31,250. However, we have the carryover of a surplus, so leaves us still in good shape. Any questions?
Questions from council? Councillor Cunningham? Your mic, please, Councillor.
Sorry. The core marketing, NBCTA, for 70, and then the NBCTA contract. Can you explain the difference between the two?
Yeah, absolutely. So the $70,000 at the top there where it says Regional Core Marketing. So NBCTA, Northern BC Tourism Association, provide some programs where we can buy in at 50-cent dollars and such, and those include the BC Ferries campaign that I spoke to earlier. There, they also provide us some co-op dollars for the Milepost advertising. That's a publication that's done throughout Alaska and northern BC. They also have their own travel guide that's earmarked as a NBCTA partner program, and they also provided us last year. They co-opted us some money on a regional campaign, so to increase visitors into the region, kind of a thing. So that $70,000 is actual money that we're actually buying advertising or radio spots and that kind of a thing through a partnership with Northern BC Tourism. When you look further down where it says the $50,000 through NBCTA contract, that really is replacing what we used to have as administrative expenses of about $170,000. So what we've done is we've gone out, we've hired Jill, or we've hired Northern BC Tourism to supply us Jill on a annual basis, and the uses and the access to Tasha's and the Clint's, Fraser's, and the Simon Ratcliffe's to come in and do specialized marketing for us from time to time. So that is really the administrative cost of us operating the organization.
Other questions? Councillor Niche?
When you first brought up the hotel tax at the very beginning of your presentation there, I was just kind of curious into what you were, it almost seemed like you had a problem with something, or I was just trying to understand where you're going there.
Sorry about to maybe leave that confusion. No, we have no problem at all. The significance is, the difference is, it's just that tourism, that Prince Rupert is different from the rest of the most of the other communities in the province. However, I guess the point I was trying to make is that we are trying to be part of that solution. However, there is some legislation that we agreed to, and the City of Prince Rupert back in 1999 agreed to of a base funding level. It's not a threat. We're not unhappy, but it's there. The challenge that we do have as an industry is we don't have that ability to have that sunset clause where every 5 years we can look at it and say, is this money being utilized properly, professionally? Are we getting the bang for the buck? Terrace, I believe last year, opted out of the 2% hotel tax because they have that five-year window where we don't. And it's not that we're unhappy about it. It's just that it's, in some ways it may be beneficial to be able to have that accountability within the legislation or within that act that allows the accountability to, to make sure that we're good stewards of the money versus, the organization that we inherited where we had 70% of our budget was being used up in administrative purposes. I guess would be our only concern. Excuse me.
Other questions? Councillor Cunningham?
Just a comment, it's going to be hard for you to say you're not good stewards when you're part of the hotels.
No, we're very good at collecting the money and remitting it, and then we've done equally well of making sure that we're spending it like it was our own. So,
other questions? I actually have just two quick questions. Is there any way to track how much usage on these kiosks are being, how much these are being used?
My understanding, I'm not a technical person, my understanding they can actually see from behind the scenes, they can see where people are utilizing and what locations are being utilized the most, what people are looking for, that kind of an idea. I haven't seen the up-to-date detail, but I understand the one located at Calpachino's is in the front running, as is the one at the Visitor Information Center. And we can move those around the community. We actually have plans to place one or two in the airport once the airport's completed. Excuse me. And I think there's also a great opportunity where we can look at really a gateway at that airport, because we all don't like the idea of being stuck at the airport for an hour. However, it's a great captive audience when you're in the tourism game, and there's some stuff that we could do there with video and interactive where we could really have, even business visitors get to see a different side of Prince Rupert. So I think there's going to be a great opportunity there once that facility is less dust and such, and we can find a home for kiosks and also maybe some larger touchscreen interactive televisions.
Okay, and so traditionally, Tourism Prince Rupert was a member base, so it's still currently that's the model now, and then so you're moving to a stakeholder model. And so just like a little bit more explanation around how that looks.
Okay, so yes, so Tourism Prince Rupert technically right now is still a member-based organization. So our members are the only people who can vote at the AGM. They're the only people who can run for the board of directors, and they are the only people who technically we're allowed to promote or advertise for. However, that being said, we've come to the realization that really isn't, that doesn't represent the community well. It isn't what isn't the best use and the best stewards of those finances. So we've begun to move into more of a stakeholder model. So if you go onto the Northern BC Tourism app, that is actually supposed to be only populated by our members, our Tourism Prince Rupert members. However, you'd see 3 restaurants and you would see, no gas stations because we don't have any as members. So really, it's not visitor-centric. It doesn't really show the visitors what Prince Rupert has to offer, and it doesn't do anybody a real service. It does the community a disservice. So we've populated that with as many businesses in Prince Rupert that we can get information for and make sure that they're out there and they're represented. We're going to do the same thing on our website here in the coming weeks, and hopefully by the end of January have that completely populated. Now, some of our members might say that's not what we should be doing, but we think from a community perspective, it's exactly what we should be doing. We have our existing bylaws, which require the City of Prince Rupert and yourselves to allow us to change. We've got some work that's begun on those bylaws to change it to a stakeholder model, so that there is no membership, so that we're not limiting to the people that we represent and the people that we don't. We're looking to be inclusive of all businesses in Prince Rupert, giving them basic listings and basic marketing and making sure they're part of that overall push. And there will be opportunities for them to advertise in visitor guides or maybe enhance listings of websites and that kind of a thing. But our goal is to be representing every business in Prince Rupert that believes that they have a benefit or they can generate an additional income from tourism, is where our goal is.
So then they would pay, and then still for the stakeholder model?
They would pay nothing.
So how does that affect then, if there's no more membership, the qualifications for the board of directors then?
Well, that's why we have to rewrite those bylaws, and that's why we're going to come to you to show you. Actually, this isn't a new model. This is a model that's being used at Northern BC Tourism. It's being used around the province. And what it actually says, what the proposed bylaw talks about, is that to be a member of the board of directors or to be a voting member, you have to participate in one of the programs that Tourism Prince Rupert offers. So you have to buy a web listing, or you have to be in the visitor guide, or you have to have attended a trade show on our behalf, or something that really shows that you have some skin in the game. So that's how they've dealt with it, and we could do something very similar. However, the difference is currently the City of Prince Rupert has the ability to appoint people, and some of those other organizations they don't, so there would be a balance in there as well, I assume. So we're going to be working on that here in the coming new year, and hopefully have it to council early in the spring, have you endorse the bylaw changes, and then take it to our membership at an AGM for the endorsement, and hopefully change into that stakeholder model.
Okay, any other questions? Well, thank you very much for your time and great work. It looks like you've done lots here, so thanks very much for everything.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, Ms. Susan Marsden, the curator of the Museum of Northern BC. You may all sit up at the front if you'd like.
Okay, so I just enough board members to populate the chairs.
Good.
That's okay, we'll put you in.
Good evening.
I thought I might start by just introducing the board members that are here, since you're not know them all. All you young people might not know us, so.
Ms. Marsden, could I ask you to maybe use the mic too, this so people at home can hear us as well?
Oh, yeah, okay. So Doug Moore is in the shipping industry, has been supporter of the arts for his whole life and is also involved with the Concert Society. David Archer is our president. He's a professor at Northwest Community College, one of the leading Northwest Coast archaeologists, and also is involved with the Heritage Society in Prince Rupert. Rick Miller is Niskit Lop, head chief of his house in Kitsum-Kalem. He worked in the defense business, right?
Yeah.
Worked in the defense business, and now he's retired. He's involved in First Nations consulting and being retired. And Heather McLean has been in Heritage her whole life. She's been involved with province-wide heritage organizations and also been a strong supporter in Prince Rupert for decades and is also in the Heritage Society. And Mark Rutterham is a local successful business person, and his organization, his business, the Prince Rupert Wood and Steel, is responsible for the amazing construction of the inside of the museum. Without his company, we would not be the museum we are. And we have 5 other board members, but we didn't want their backs to sit to you, so we only brought 5.
And yourself?
Well, I'll tell you my life history here. No. I'm Susan Marsden. I'm the curator-director or director-curator of the museum. I used to just be the curator, but now we don't have a director, so I'm both. I used to be a teacher. I've been in the museum now for 26 years. My main sort of work has been in exhibit design. I did Quinitsa, the new museum. I design most of the education programs and the tourism programs and most of the exhibits in conjunction with Erin Alger. Erin Alger is our collections manager, art gallery manager. And Sam Bryant is Ligi Skegio. No, Timayam Ben? Timgausum Kwa. Okay. Timgausum Kwa, he's the Ligi Gaget of a house in Lakwalams. And he's also the artistic director of the museum and a go-to for the whole community for First Nations protocol. So that's our membership tonight.
Well, great. Welcome, everybody.
So just going to hand out a few things just to sort of trying to do a lot in a 20-minute period. Okay. Okay. Right. So, and on behalf of the museum and the board, I'd like to congratulate all the new councillors and the new mayor. And we look forward to working with you and for the success of the community.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to start here and try and be brief. It is difficult with the new mayor and several new council members to know exactly how to use our presentation time effectively. In the past, with the new council, we've offered a slideshow history of the museum from 1924 when it was first started and a detailed visual overview of our programs and activities. At other times, we have offered a summary of the financial ups and downs at the museum resulting from changing financial environments at different political levels since the late 1990s. We have also given an overview of the creation of the new museum facility and the ultimately successful joint efforts of the museum and the city to have the museum own its facility. At other times, we've presented the museum's expansion plans designed to include more extensive exhibits on the history of Prince Rupert. Realistically, none of these are possible this evening. Instead, we have a few handouts that summarize some of these presentations. The city has copies of the booklets if you would like to examine them later, but we will need these back at the end of the presentation as they are our only copies. So you can keep the papers, but we need the booklets back. Yeah.
So that you have two sort of sets of handouts. One is the history and one is what we're going to talk about for 2014, 2015. So in this presentation, we could focus on the events at the end of 2013 that left the museum in a very challenging position in 2014, having to make very drastic cuts to staff and programs and to seriously assess the long-term prospects of maintaining a museum of this caliber in Prince Rupert. But that is covered in the application. So instead, we have chosen to offer here a brief overview of the successes of 2014 and goals and plans for 2015. You have received the museum's application and had a chance to review it. I have allotted time for questions after this brief presentation. So one chart that you have shows a list of the events, programs, and tours that we accomplished in 2014. That's a two or three pages. I'll briefly mention some of the highlights. In exhibits for 2014 in the Ruth Harvey Art Gallery, we had 2 solo exhibits by Northern BC artists Deanne Muir from Terrace and Perry Rath from Smithers. These were very well received, as were the Prince Rupert Camera Club and the Ridley Terminals Art Initiative annual exhibits. This year, the museum has exhibited works by a total of 50 local and regional artists. This year as well, museum staff created a special in-house exhibit, Treasures from Storage, which was a response to the public's desire to see artifacts from the museum's research collection. The comments of the general public showed that they very much appreciated seeing these objects from Prince Rupert's history. Some said an impressive exhibit, so well researched, very educational, also beautifully organized. That's from our comment book. A school program was developed for this exhibit, but unfortunately only one school attended before the teachers' strike began. And this year, for the first time, the lobby was used for a small temporary exhibit when members of the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry asked the museum to celebrate its 100th anniversary. The museum staff developed a special exhibit for them. Warrant Officer Sean Peterson and Captain Alan Younghusband came from head office in Edmonton to speak at the opening event, along with the Mayor of Prince Rupert and a representative of the Tsimshian Chiefs. The event was well attended by members of the local Legion, past and present members of the PPCLI, several Tsimshian leaders, and the general public. 2014 programs, events, tours, and museum visitors. The museum this year hosted several public events and participated in several others in partnership with other organizations. Museum staff worked together with Terrace and Prince Rupert residents on events to participate in the Canada-wide celebration of the 100th anniversary of the completion of the Grand Trunk Pacific Railway. The museum also hosted a group of Maori artists from New Zealand and participated in the following local events: the Prince Rupert Children's Festival, Literacy Week, the Multicultural Art Workshops in the museum's Artist Studio, the Multicultural Festival held in the Ceremonial Room, and Winterfest. The museum also hosted an event thanking Bob Scales, a retired United Church minister, who personally delivered a model he made of the Thomas Crosby 5. He had worked as a minister on this boat and served the coast from it. The model was officially donated to the museum at a ceremony led by Mayor Musalem and Heather McLean from the museum board. Highlights of the museum's school programs in 2014 include continuing steady participation of students in a variety of programs and the increasing popularity of the newly developed Clans and Crest program, which combines a museum experience with performances at the Longhouse. And Sam Bryant is in charge of all of the performances at the Longhouse, and many of the guided tours as well. In May alone, schools from the region participated in museum programming on 12 of the 18 days the museum was open. As well, groups of students from the region continued to experience the feast program in large numbers, and a group of 80 band students from Chicago also participated in the program, giving it rave reviews. In 2014, thousands of visitors from all over the world visited the Museum of Northern BC. So far this year, there have been visitors from 30 American states, from Alaska to New York and Florida, from every province in Canada, from 52 BC cities and towns, from 15 European countries, 8 Pacific Rim countries, and from as far away as Tanzania, Africa, Israel, and Mongolia. This year, the positive response of many of our visitors was expressed in the museum receiving a Certificate of Excellence from TripAdvisor. Visitor comments included the following: a gem of a museum equal to the finest in the world. This museum was an unexpected and positively delightful find, featuring superb quality artifacts and displays. I have visited some of the leading museums throughout Canada, the US, and Europe, and this one is a real treasure, offering an excellent perspective on BC's culture and history. Also comments, so those are comments from the web, so that is getting out into the world quite extensively. Also, comments such as these from our guest books indicate strong approval of the visitor experiences. What treasures in this beautiful building and displays with such care and thought about their significance to the culture they arose from. That's from a person from Black Diamond, Alberta. Amazing way to capture the spirit of Prince Rupert, Oakland, California. Beautiful, every Canadian should experience this, so peaceful. Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. So pleased to see the coastal history honored in this way. Terrace, BC. I've been all over the world, and this was the classiest and best museum I've been to. A northern BC resident. Great service at the museum and very engaging employees. Good experience. Somebody from Prince Rupert. Impressive. Kudos from a Cherokee, Sarasota, Florida. Each corner another wonder, Black Creek, British Columbia. And finally, the feast was very interesting, and the longhouse and dancing and storytelling was stunning, mesmerizing. Wonderful to see young people learning and honoring their heritage. Silver Spring, Maryland. Lovely experience, wonderful longhouse feast. The sound of the shells and beads on the costumes as they danced will stay long in my memory. Anonymous. Absolutely the best balance of info, activity, and experience. Thanks, from Vermont. And finally, the people of Prince Rupert collectively commented on their museum by voting it the best tourism attraction in 2014. In closing, I would like to mention the museum's contribution to the Multicultural Festival, in which we exhibited and explained a collection of small figures carved in the Scandinavian flat plane style. They were carved and donated by Andrew Morse, one of the early residents of Prince Rupert and a participant in the Battle of Kelly's Cut. He carved 4 figures from an early Prince Rupert girls baseball team, 2 of them his daughters of Swedish origin, and the other 2 girls of Italian and Japanese origin. Many of the people attending the festival expressed their appreciation and their gratitude that the museum has preserved and continues to share this art and history. On this note, our focus moving forward in 2015, and you have the chart of all the things we're planning for 2015, is to continue to develop the museum as a cultural center of the many identities that make up Prince Rupert, from the original peoples of Tsimshian and their neighbors, to the founders of Prince Rupert, to those that built the 20th century economy here, and to the many peoples from countries all over the world who came here bringing their knowledge and talents to help build our community.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions from council? Councilor Cunningham?
Just a comment, not a question. I've been to the museum several times, and I think it's an experience everyone in this council should take in if they haven't. It's a wonderful facility, and I think this city council should support it. And if I had the ability, I'd double their grant.
Any other questions from council? Councilor Kinney?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Susan. It was great to hear you again and see you again. I just want to say everything I hear about the museum is great, and I know how you run it and how you run it on needle and thread. and you've done a wonderful job. We're very proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Other councillors? I do want to say though, I just wanted to ask, what's the condition of the museum, like infrastructure wise, at the moment?
You mean the actual
The
facility?
building, yeah.
It's in need of about $700,000 worth of upgrade, the building itself, not the museum portion, but the building, the membrane. We did apply for funds a year and a half ago and were unsuccessful, but it is one of our top priorities to, in concert with Kit Catla, who owns the other strata lot in the building, to find the money to it's not serious now, but it should be addressed now so it isn't serious in the future. And there are some things that concern us inside the museum. We have, we've been there now 18 odd years. So our heating, ventilating, and air cooling system, we had to replace the boiler last year. That was a $10,000 expense we didn't know about. There are just certain things like in your security system, if you suddenly have a little thingy that goes out and they tell you, oh, well, they don't make those anymore. You need a whole new $3,000 change. So those kinds of things are starting to happen in the museum. We have really strong support from businesses that, like, not financial support, but that do the work to help us keep our system up. We're also trying to put in a more extensive security system because we had a really bad time with vagrants and vandalism this year. Well, it just keeps on going. We're spending approximately $3,000 a year just repairing the vandalism up at the Longhouse. So, and we had quite a problem with a group of alcoholics that, I mean, I say alcoholics because the people who handled them told me they were alcoholics, not because of anything else, but they were trying to move in and they created a real mess, and it cost us about $800 to clean it up, and we had to deal with the police and so on. So there's a lot of ongoing sort of just maintenance issues, day-to-day maintenance issues. I came to work yesterday, turned on my email, and there's a vagrant sleeping at the back of the building. That's from one of the tenants, because we manage the building. So I have to call the police and deal with that. So there's a fair amount of that kind of thing as well.
And how many staff do you have at the moment?
There's five permanent staff. So there's myself, Aaron, who's the collections manager, Sam, who's manages the front desk and does all the artistic and tours and so on. And then there's Amanda, who's the gift shop manager, and Merrick, who does maintenance, and he knows how to do everything else. So he fills in when people are sick for lunches, that sort of thing. And he also does, well, for example, yesterday we had to have all the fire hoses changed, and he took the Sanex around and had them all changed. So that's a really important job, because otherwise it would be using up all my time. And then we have part-time janitorial staff.
Okay, well, just want you all to know that I'm a huge fan of heritage and culture, and I grew up in the art scene here in this community, and I've been to the museum many, many times. And yeah, you guys are doing a great job. And I just wanted to get a sense of some of the, after learning about our own infrastructure needs, would like to see from your perspective what your needs are. So just wanted to get that clarity, and I just want to thank you all for coming today, and thanks for your application. And yeah, absolutely. Well, Councillor Cunningham.
One question, in the future, Mrs. Marsden, if we can help in any way with these grants by supporting your application or that, I think the council would be more than happy to assist you in any way we could.
That would be greatly appreciated. Those supporting letters are very, very effective.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for coming, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you need these back then too?
Just the booklets, yeah.
You don't want these, though?
Oh, these would be, but these, okay, gotcha. Well, My bad. Well, thank you, actually. Okay, moving into the business portion of our meeting. So next item on the agenda, 4A, is a report from Chief Financial Officer. Recommendation that council provide direction to staff of the amounts to be awarded and recipients of the 2015 Community Enhancement Grants. And Ms. Baughman, would you want to speak to this for a moment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now that we've heard from 5 of the larger grant applicants, we would care to have direction as to how we will be allocating some of the funding, who will be receiving funding, and what percentage. It is expected that the city's 2015 operating fund revenues will remain about the same. Cost pressures will include general inflation increases, benefit cost increases, energy cost increases, and possible negotiated wage increases. The Finance Department is proposing a bit of a change this year. In prior years, normally 100% of grants that were requested were awarded by the end of January of the fiscal year. This year, we're proposing that 65% be awarded to whichever recipients you decide. And then that way, the remainder could be considered as a part of the overall budget process as opposed to allocating out grants 100% before knowing what the impact is to the tax and the tax burden and the taxpayers. And so therefore, council may wish to consider the following options. Approve grants at the amounts requested, approve grants at the percentage recommended by Finance Department, or advise some or all grant recipients that grant funding in 2015 will be reduced by a percentage deemed by council. Thank you.
I recommend a mover and seconder for the recommendation on the floor. Oh, Ms. Baughman.
Sorry, and one more thing, since we've just heard from a couple of the grant applicants who have indicated that they've changed the amounts that they're requesting. The amount that is circulated on your schedule at 65%, just for example, used to be $1,080,397. With the reduction, a 65% recommendation would actually be $848,522. And that 65%, 100% would be $1,212,036. That is taking out the contractual obligation, which is 100% to the Gulf Society.
Okay, so then before I have any sort of move here, then I'd just like to get more clarity. Then is that the recommendation essentially is that we'll give 65% of the funding, and then we'll choose whether or not we can allocate the last 35% based on the budget. Okay. Could I get a mover and seconder for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Redhawa, second by Councillor Cunningham. Discussion? Councillor Morrow?
I think an important distinction that we need to take into consideration here in terms of the 65-35 is whether some of these grants are purely for operating purposes or whether they're for projects. And with some of these nonprofit societies, especially the big 5, where we've essentially delegated responsibility for some core municipal functions to nonprofit societies to operate on our behalf with the use of volunteer labor predominantly, I think it creates unnecessary, or maybe I should say uncertainty, to only approve 65%. So what I'd be recommending and how I'll be basing my vote with the big 5 here is I would strongly recommend that council votes for 100% today if we are in support of those, because I think it creates unnecessary uncertainty if they don't know that they're going to receive the additional 35%, and it's really hard to plan programs throughout the year.
There's a motion on the floor at the moment, so I'll keep that recommendation for a moment. We'll just have a discussion, and then if we choose, we can change the motion. That being said, I agree with Councillor Moreau. It actually is coming into a larger question of these same 5 groups will continually come and see us every year, and they're the same. My point here is that I think that we need to start exploring whether or not we should be going into some sort of longer term arrangement with these groups, particularly the ones that are consistently coming to us that are core functions of the city, and starting to analyze whether or not them coming every year, having to do the same presentation every year, and having this kind of uncertainty is also part of that particular question. Now, from my understanding that today we're not voting on approving their budget. Is that correct, Mr. Manager?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Well, it depends on which resolution goes. The resolution for the 65% is designed so that the other 35% could be determined in combination with all the other requests that you will have upon you at budget time, and not recognizing that we may not be able to fund without substantial tax increases all the expectations that are there. So if you do make a choice at 100%, that's going to limit then if you have expectations on tax levels, that'll limit your ability to deal with that. So our recommendation was to go with the lower percentage for now, and that leaves you a certain amount of leeway to determine what happens with when you get all the other information, including the assessment, etc. So you can determine what the overall tax rate is. Now, the other issue, I think, which is a light issue, but I think it's important, is putting some certainty into this equation. Probably is helpful for both us and for these organizations that are supplying us with community services, and that will give them the certainty they look for, and likewise us. But having said that, obviously that the certainty, say in a 5-year contract, is one thing, but that still doesn't mean that council wouldn't be approving budgets, but likely not going to be you're going to deal with the increases or a small incremental piece of those budgets every year, if that's the way you want to choose to do it. And I think that's what I would recommend, because we have to have some certainty around what the tax levels are going to be, etc. So I think moving towards, say, a 5-year contract with some of these groups would be advantageous to both parties, but there needs to still be the ability for council to set tax rates and determine the overall tax equation in terms of our annual budget. So, but I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. This particular policy that's been recommended to you is trying to give certainty to these groups. They obviously won't spend 65% of it between now and the time we get the budget finalized, and it will then allow you some leeway. I doubt that I doubt that we'll ever make a final conclusion of 65% for the year, but at least we'll give you some leeway to deal with all the other expectations that are upon you, already have become upon you, and you will recognize as we get closer to budget finalization that there's the expectations for resources is always substantially higher than our ability to supply. So,
Councillor Cunningham.
I tend to agree with Councillor Moreau on this issue, simply because these 5 organizations provide services to the city that are core to the city in more than one way. The library, the economic development. Tourism Prince Rupert doesn't have a staff, so they're providing a service that does bring a lot of money into the community in one way or another. The museum, the library, the PAC, they're all core components. They're the core of this town. They're all facilities that everyone touches on at one time or another. And I really think bringing stability to them, those 5, is very important. And, if we're going to go with a 65-35, I would like to see that 35 is guaranteed to them, not that it's a maybe. Like they have staff to pay and a lot of other stuff. They're maintaining buildings, they're maintaining staff, they're maintaining schedules. The museum, for one, is got exhibits coming in that they have to account for and things like that. And it's all money that's outlaid at the beginning of the year. And if nothing else, I would like to be able to have a discussion with them and say, can you survive on 65% till you get your other 35, knowing that these core 5 are going to get their 100% funding if that's what we're going to do. Because it's very important to them to know at the beginning of the year what's going on. They, the museum's cut to the bone right now. It's, it can't go any less. And then you just heard that they've got infrastructure problems coming up, things like this. And, and they've been dealing with all this through the big heart of the community. You've got contractors that are helping them out at, bare bone prices are donating their work and that. And I think it's very important that they have stability, these 5.
Just to add to that then is, we're looking at the grant request schedule here, and we have major grants and grants and aid. Now there's 6 total for the major grants. What I don't want us to get into a little bit is we say these as core services, but yet Prince Rupert Special Events Society is also something that puts on 5 events a year. Are they not considered the same? What I would not want us to get into a situation here is where who's in, who's out in terms of 100%. And so if we're gonna play favorites, so to speak, and I hear everything you're saying. I agree. There are the major grants, but I don't know if we should get into a situation where we've said these people are special and these people will get the scraps of our funding. And so part of me feels that maybe for this particular year, I'm a little bit inclined to go with the recommendation at the moment, not because I don't think we're going to approve the 35% afterwards for the museum, for example, and that will come in, is that March or May or around there. And again, they're not going to spend the 65% right away. As Mr. Manager was saying, that does give us a little bit of leeway to then be able to work with the budget a little bit more. And as a council, seems to me that we're in agreement that there's certain services that need to be provided, and that we can still choose to give the rest of the funding. But I don't know if we should say, draw a line, who's going to get it, fund 100, and then who's going to get the scraps, and then it kind of gets us into a situation where maybe that's not how we want to be analyzing these. And so I'm just going to throw that out there, but I'm going to give it to Councillor Niche for a moment, then coming up.
When I was looking at this last night, I was, kind of agreeing partially with the 65%, but, after hearing tonight, and, kind of looking at the groups that are asking for the money, obviously the museum, I think a big hit to them was the fact that they don't have the visitor info center anymore. So, but then you also look at the tourism, and they've asked for a substantial amount of money less than they were asking for. So I believe that, maybe we could work it at 80% or something, and maybe move it up a little bit more, because realistically, these grants are most likely are going to be close to what they're asking for, and I think we could hurt them by offering only 65. I think 80% would probably be more something that would benefit everyone and still give us a little bit of leeway to work with it at the end of the year.
Councillor Cunningham?
The fact that Tourism Prince Rupert is asking for substantial less leaves a lot on the table now in the original budget. And I really don't like that expression, scraps. We're not doling out little pieces of this and that. We've got to look at this all seriously and decide which is relevant and which is less relevant. It's unfortunate. We're the ones that have to make that decision, and sometimes people like it and sometimes people don't. But I still think we have core groups that you know, and the Special Events Society is one of them. I'm just looking at the 5 that came tonight. You know, there's others that we've got to consider. And if we're going to make a motion of 65 or 80, then that's fine. But these 5, 6, maybe even 7 groups provide so much to the city. And there's so many volunteer hours that go into these. And by, you know, not giving them the stability, you know, sometimes they might start losing volunteers. And if they start losing volunteers, they're going to be looking for more money, because it's amazing when you see the hours put into some of these facilities for volunteers. It just blows me away.
And yeah, what I meant by the scraps, just to clear that up, is that if we locked ourselves into agreeing to 100% of a certain amount of groups, that come budget time, and if we're not say we discover that, you know, we're in a strain or something like that, and we need to raise taxes or things like that, it's lessening our ability to give the rest of the groups aid, is all I was getting for that. So scraps might have not been the right word, but that's more what I was getting at. So perhaps I'll ask if there's other councillors that like to weigh in on this. Councillor Redhour?
Yeah, I agree with the staff. I think we should go 65-35 until we see how our tax looks like, our revenue looks like, and we have to look for our infrastructure and wages. So that time I think we can make a good decision, like how everything looks. If we can keep same, or we can go less, or we can increase there. I know everybody is important, but I think 65-35 is good numbers right now.
Councillor Kinney, Councillor Niche.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in agreement to a certain point, but if through you, Mr. Mayor, to our CEO, if we were to go this 65, would we be able to tell these people they will be getting the? Because for an example, our PAC cannot run on that.
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Kinney, none of this is designed to try and cause any problems for any of these important community groups. We can remember that we don't get taxes until the middle of the year, and we don't give everybody a big grant at the beginning because we have to go out and borrow the money. So we try to organize this so that we give money out as we go through the year, as they, you know, with the total annual amount, with the idea that we try to minimize the amount of money that we give out until after we get our taxes in. So certainly 65 through to May the 15th at the latest is the same amount of money they would get otherwise. Even if you say today 100%, we will still give them monthly checks until we get the budget finalized. Did I get that right? Yeah, more or less. Okay, good, thanks.
Councillor Kinney, or Niche. Sure. Perhaps Councillor Moreau, you'd like to have another comment from his point, or you still were original? Okay. Well, I'll say part of me agrees with this 80-20 as well. I'm not sure if in this moment we need to get too specific. Part of me feels the 65-35 will work. It's a similar thing. And again, as a council, we will still decide who does get the full grant in the end. But I do kind of think with how we've operated in the past, this gives us the ability to at least be flexible. And we're not trying to put it out to these other organizations that they don't have security anymore. And this is where I think later we should definitely have the discussion of the long-term funding structures of these certain core groups. But at the moment where we're at in terms of financials position, what's going to happen with this budget, whether or not we're willing to raise taxes, things like that, this might give us the flexibility of at least being able to decide who and where and when type of thing. Councillor Cunningham?
Okay, let's ask Corinne if we go 65-35 versus 100. Does going 100 put a hardship on our funds the beginning of the year?
We have the money in the bank. The issue is that you, as in your own house, you don't start giving away to the charities without knowing what the revenues are that are coming in. And that's really what we're trying to do, is just say, yes, we recognize that these places are a community service that is operated by them on behalf of the city, essentially. By giving away $1.3 million essentially at the beginning of the year, and then having to raise the money through taxation later on, and possibly cutting our core services, which are roads, sewer, water, that sort of thing, is a little bit, it's challenging. So what we're trying to do is just say, let's bring the whole donation as well as the services more to the budget time, but still recognizing the fact that we want to provide money and support to these service organizations that do offer such a valued component to the community.
Councillor Cunningham?
Okay, with that recommendation, I'll go 65-35 because May is the, fifth month of the year, if I remember my math correctly, which is only not even 50% of the year, and you're giving them 65. Unless there's a hardship with one or two of the core groups where they need more money up front, and if they are, I would encourage them to come back to us and explain it to us, so that if they need a little bit more than the 65%, then we can deal with it.
I'd also be very concerned if you were to spend your entire budget right off the bat for any organization. So, yeah, again, just reiterating that we're not funding these groups, right? We're just pacing ourselves this time around is all. And so is there other discussion around this at the moment? Councillor Moreau?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clarify through you with the CFO that last year the total amount awarded was 1.373 million, and this year the revised requests is 1.212 million. Is that correct?
The revised request at 100% is now 1,374,000. 162,000 of that is contractual, and also 160,000 of it is the hotel tax. So those have to be passed over anyway, which results in 1,052,000 being the grant applications, and that's at 100%.
Councillor Moreau?
So to me, and what I read from that is, compared to last year, if we were to approve 100% today, hypothetically, it's $1,000 more compared to 2014.
And there's also two new requests in 2015 that were not there in 2014, and that makes up some of the difference of $1,000.
So I just want to have a larger conversation for a second, because one thing that we've hit on a few times is providing certainty to these groups that provide essential community services. In real terms, we're talking about approving $1,000 more than last year to offer 2 additional grants. And I think the larger conversation needs to be had of how we're going to change this process to provide certainty both to us, as Mr. Long had said earlier, but also to these groups. I think that's of the utmost importance in making this decision here today, is how are we going to change this process moving forward to have a broader conversation more than year to year if we're going to approve the request or not year to year, but over 2, 3, 4 years.
Ms. Bauman?
For the benefit of the new council, just for information purposes, 1% increase to the mill rate equates to about $115,000.
Mr. Manager?
Yeah, and I think if you could dispense with this resolution, which is still on the floor, we can. I think it would be appropriate for council to request the staff to come forward with a report that would do, and I think this is something that I would like to talk to some of these groups about what would be best for them. I mean, from my point of view, a multi-year contract for services that are managed in some way to make sure there's some accountability back to the taxpayers is gives certainty to both of us, both groups. But I'd like to have kind of a chat with them to then be able to bring a report back. But if that's what council is interested, I think it would be appropriate after you dispense with this resolution to actually pass a resolution requesting us to do that, and we'll do that and bring forward before the budget sort of a suggestion of how we might do things differently. Particularly, I'm hearing particularly with respect to these sort of core municipal-like services. They're not actually, but and then we can work with them to figure out what's the best piece of certainty for both of us. I have heard that it being in a 5-year contract, for example, it gives them quite a bit more certainty than the present circumstance, where they really have to come and then hope that our financial circumstances are good enough for them to be able to keep going. And I think that's not very helpful for any of us. So,
Councilor Moreau, just that being said, is personally I'm not sure what the solution is at this very moment, and I'm not sure if you have any for yourself either. And so one of my recommendation is how we move forward from this particular piece is that we vote on the motion on the floor, and then we take Mr. Manager's recommendation, and then we can, during this year, sort this out, get through this budget process, and then when we come time next year, we have a system in place that we feel confident that we've made some significant changes to the grant application process. And that's my feeling at the moment. I don't know if we're going to have the solution here today, but Councillor Cunningham?
Okay, if we're going to go 65-35, as I mentioned earlier, I would like to possibly make an amendment that any of the groups, if they need extra funding before the May, can come and see us. I don't know if it's just a conversation we can have on the side with them, or we actually have to make an amendment to the resolution.
Mr. Manager, what would you recommend for that?
Sure, it's not a problem to put a rider and make an amendment to add that rider to the resolution. I don't think that'd be a problem.
Okay, so the recommendation then, Mr. Manager, I can just so the recommendation then would be to approve the recommendation from CFO, in addition to allowing the opportunity for any groups that need to seek extra financial assistance, that they are able to come visit us before the budget process is over to make their case. Is that correct? Yep. Okay, so if there's not any further discussion, I'd like to call a question. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carried.
Yeah.
Next item of business, 4B, is a report from the Chief Financial Officer. Recommendation that Mayor and Council approve the service provider agreement between the City of Prince Rupert and the Prince Rupert Special Events Society for the purpose of liability insurance coverage by the Municipal Insurance Association, and that Mayor and Council approve the service provider agreement between the City of Prince Rupert and Leicester Centre of the Arts for the purpose of liability insurance coverage by the Municipal Insurance Association. Ms. Baumann, would you quickly like to touch on this topic?
Thank you. The city has typically always provided liability coverage for these two groups. The Municipal Insurance Association has recently changed their mandate, and they can only provide liability coverage for community event societies if they enter into a service provider agreement with the city. So basically, we need a council resolution approving the service provider agreement, which would just be to do exactly what we've been doing all the time, and that's insuring these two groups.
I'd like to get a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Kinney, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next item of business, a report from the building inspector. A recommendation that mayor and council, upon recommendation from the building inspector and pursuant to section 74 of the community charter, declare that the house located at 431 7th Avenue West in the city of Prince Rupert is a nuisance and that it be demolished and removed in accordance with sections 74, 77, and 17 of the community charter. And I'll just briefly speak to this. I went actually and visited this house myself just to see, and there's a rat infestation in this house, and they're burrowing. That means they're actually reproducing. The house caught fire, and to my understanding, that the owners we're having difficulty with the owners. And Mr. Manager, if there's anything additional to this item that you might want to add.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The community charter allows the municipality the power to deal with these kinds of nuisances when they're a danger to public health and safety. And I think we're in this circumstance, and we will follow the act as we deal with this issue moving forward.
So I'd like to get a mover and seconder for the recommendation on the floor. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Niche. Any discussion? Councillor Cunningham?
Just one quick question. As we're also doing the solid waste, and we studied that quite thoroughly the other day. Now, when this house is demolished, is it going to be a backhoe, throw it all in the bins and take it to the dump, or is it going to be separated?
I'm assuming it's going to go to the dump under the resident fee. Is that correct, Mr. Manager?
Yes, there'll be no 40%, I'm afraid, no 40% surcharge.
Does that answer your question?
Right.
Any other discussion? Question? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, now next item of business, 4D. Additional item on the agenda is a report from the corporate administrator. Recommendation that council transfer the appointment of alternative director of the Northwest Regional Hospital District Board from Councillor Niche to Mayor Brain, and that council appoint Councillor Moreau as the second alternative director of the Northwest Regional Hospital District Board. And the reason this report has come up is because we learned later, after making our board appointments, that the only members of the Skeena Queen Charlotte Regional Board of Directors or alternative directors can be appointed to the hospital board. So unfortunately, I wasn't aware of that particular piece. And so now there's only myself and Councillor Kinney and Councillor Cunningham and Councillor Moreau on the Skeena Queen Charlotte Regional Board of Directors. My understanding is that Councillor Cunningham, you're already on this board, correct? And so the only other options would be myself, Councillor Kinney, and Councillor Moreau. And so and the meetings, my understanding, Mr. Manager, that they're in Terrace?
Yes.
Once a month? So I'm willing to take the appointment on, but I just thought I'd open that up to Councillor Moreau or Councillor Kinney if you had any interest in that board to be a director. You're willing to, I have no problems giving it up to either or, if you're interested. Councillor Moreau.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to take it if you don't want it, Nelson. I know that I'm taking on quite a bit of responsibility with Northern Development Initiative Trust, and I'm happy to take on more responsibility. But if you'd like to,
I've
then
been on that committee for quite a few years. I'd like to stay on.
Okay, so then what I'd like to do then is change the recommendation, or someone make a motion to appoint Councillor Moreau as the alternative director and appoint myself, Mayor Brain, as the, Councillor Moreau as the, these are alternative director, sorry, my apologies. We only appoint one board director to this board, or two?
Skeena Queen Charlotte, you have two.
Okay, so only one for the hospital? Two. So two. So these both say alternative director.
You and I are on this. Skeena.
There's two directors on there right now, Nelson and myself, and you're appointing two alternates.
Oh, okay. My apologies. Okay, so the original recommendation then. I didn't get a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Cunningham. Seconded by Councillor Niche. Discussion? My apologies for the confusion. Question? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Second, 4E, item of business, report from Chief Financial Officer, is a recommendation that council approve by resolution the proposed schedules of capital works and capital purchase so that the city staff can begin to plan and organize for their acquisition and construction in the 2015 fiscal period. And Councillor, or Ms. Baumann, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Each year, the City Council adopts a 5-year financial plan bylaw. This bylaw authorizes the budgeted expenditures, and that typically doesn't need to be done until May 15th. However, every year we try to do a capital works and capital purchases resolution, and basically this provides approval and provides the time required to tender projects and design requirements for works to be scheduled and performed throughout the year. Many of the projects planned for 2015 are funded out of the utility revenues, appropriated surplus reserves, dividends, and grants, and some have been rolled over or are a continuation from fiscal 2014. Some notable projects to be undertaken in 2015 are highlighted. We have the landfill expansion to accommodate the needed airspace. This is a carryover of 2014's budgeted item. However, we were unable to begin the project considering it was so late in the 2014 fiscal year. The city has been planning to begin a large waterworks project in which the infrastructure to supply water to the municipality is rejuvenated. The first stage of the project is to begin in 2015 with the construction of an access road to the Woodworth Dam and the lowering of the supply line below ground to protect it from slides and wind-thrown trees. This project is to be funded through dividends from Legacy Inc. and through grants. The attached schedule itemizes the dollar values that will be are planned to be expended throughout the year, and to facilitate the timely acquisition of the proposed capital purchases and planning and organizing of proposed capital works. Council's approval by resolution of the attached schedule will provide direction to staff to begin initiating the 2015 projects.
Can I get a mover and seconder for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Ridhowa, seconded by Councillor Niche. Discussion? Councillor Moreau?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to clarify through you with staff that voting on this matter is essentially what we'd be doing by passing a resolution in support of this is approving these expenditures as we went through in our capital purchases workshop earlier in the week. Is that correct? So the one thing I'd like to add is we've had a discussion as a council through that workshop about infrastructure being funded through Legacy Inc. As a dividend. And one thing I'd really like us to consider in terms of governing on behalf of public interest is the main reason that we're dealing with so many infrastructure issues is that the reserves that have been built up over time just simply weren't enough to fund infrastructure with the shrinking tax base. And I don't want to see Prince Rupert end up in the same place that it is today 50 years from now because we've taken windfall money from a deal with Exxon, put it into renewing our infrastructure, and then not being able to sustain that infrastructure 40, 50 years down the road. So what I'm proposing is that we pass a resolution or we discuss a way or means by which we can allocate a percentage of any dividend that we're going to be getting from Legacy Inc. and developing a reserves policy. I guess that's the best way to say it, is what sort of policy we're going to have for building up our reserves so we don't run into the same situation that we are facing today.
Ms. Baumann.
Actually, as part of the budgeting process, I was going to be bringing forth a policy on reserves and evaluating some options on percentages, how we'd fund it, that sort of thing, so we could build up the reserves again.
Councillor Cunningham?
We had already discussed this in the workshop, and also I think we might be mandated by the province to do it very soon because they're talking about bringing out an asset management plan and also having a reserve percentage there. So, we can always jump ahead of the gun and have it done before the province tells us we have to do it. But I think that, from what we understood in the orientation, that's coming down the tube. So, and it's something we did discuss. We just had never set up an amount. And I agree with Councillor Moreau. It's very important that we do something like this.
Now, Councillor Morrow, you're specifically referring to a reserve account in the Legacy Inc. itself, correct? Or just in general?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm actually referring to just to have a cohesive reserve policy that if we're accepting a dividend, say for $100,000 towards an infrastructure project from Legacy Inc., that we also allocate. Some people say it's 1.1%, some say 3%, some say 5% of that infrastructure investment towards renewal of that infrastructure when it reaches its lifespan. So that's what I'm talking about developing here.
Okay. Okay, so then that being said, I completely agree. So from Ms. Baumann, then we will go through that during the budgeting process then, correct?
Yes, that's what I was proposing. We need to establish basically an investment plan for the monies in Legacy, and then at that point we can start actually determining what percentage we're going to start allocating to reserves, dividending out to go towards a reserve. We need to overhaul our entire our capital surplus policy and also any reserves.
Does that work for you, Councillor Moreau, in terms of, do you feel we need to pass a resolution still for that?
I'd just like to hear from everyone else first.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Is there other discussion about this, Councillor Nish?
I'm in total agreement with what you say, Councillor Moreau. As far as establishing a plan for that, I think that tonight's probably not the right place for that. I think during the budget process will be the right place to do it. I do support this, what's been put forward here, because I really think that, to be an effective planning, we need to be thinking about projects for next summer. We need to be thinking about them right now. And I think in the past it's been a problem because of not approving these things right away. We're getting into projects and getting the money on May 15th when the budget's in, and by then contractors are busy and everything's done. So I think it is important that we do this now instead of on May 15th.
Other Councillor Raha?
Yeah, I agree with the staff right now. So we pass this one now, and then we can work on that in the budget time.
Any other discussion? Councillor Cunningham?
I think we're all in agreement. It's just a percentage, and I'd rather go 5% than 2%. I'd rather be above it than below it. And 5% of $10,000 or $100,000 is only $5,000. And if you're putting $100,000 into infrastructure and 5% is down the road, it's going to build up a reserve that we can use that we don't have right now, and it would be great.
Councillor Morrow?
So the one thing I would add then is I wouldn't feel comfortable voting, like we just haggled for an hour on $1.3 million. This is $16.8 million we're talking about here. I wouldn't feel comfortable voting on this measure knowing that we don't have that reserve policy in the works. So I would like to make that a motion afterward.
Okay. Well, okay. So is there any further discussion about the Capital Works project? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, so we'll, Councillor Morrow, could you put your motion on the floor? We'll do it as an additional item at the moment now that we're in the topic of it.
I'll try to make this
Or
really
do you want
simple.
to have some time to write it out and then we can return to it?
No, I think I've got it.
Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to develop a reserve policy regarding funds from Prince Rupert Legacy Inc.
Second by Councillor Kinney. Discussion? Okay, question? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next item of business, bylaws 5A, report from Chief Financial Officer. Recommendation that council adopt the Prince Rupert fee setting amendment bylaw number 3359 2014, having given first, second, and third reading of the bylaw on December 15th. Recommend a motion and seconder. Moved by Councillor Cunningham. Second by Councillor Niche. Discussion? This is just
For the Civic Center, right?
yes, that's correct. The what we talked about on Monday. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, next item of business, 5B, report from the Chief Financial Officer. Recommendation that council adopt the solid waste management bylaw number 3358 2014, having repealed the solid waste bylaw number 3323 2006 and all its amendments, and having given first, second, and third readings to the bylaw on December 15th, 2014. Recommend a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Cunningham. Seconded by Councillor Kinney. Discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, at this time then I would recommend a motion to adjourn the meeting. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Niche. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.